port! Turn us around! Turn us around now!
Modern Warfare 3 has perhaps the worst Call of Duty campaign I've played. It's shallow, dull, and plays less like the greatest hits and more like underbaked cover versions of missions past. It's too busy looking back at former glories rather than focusing on making new moments worth remembering, wrapped up in a borderline incoherent story with nothing to say. The only part we haven't seen in a campaign before falls flat, bizarrely cobbling together pieces of the Warzone mode into actively bad sandbox missions, abandoning all of what made Call of Duty so great at its peak, and instead delivering a dull string of missions that amount to a thoroughly disappointing handful of hours. Sledgehammer Games' big new addition this time around is the introduction of open combat missions, which make up half of the story's chapters. They're multi-objective arenas that aim to let you tackle tasks in any order and by whatever method suits your playstyle best. Unfortunately, they're symptomatic of Modern Warfare 3's flawed approach as a whole, opting for a thin veil of openness and choice over Call of Duty's once trademarked blockbuster storytelling. They rarely feel curated or authored, but instead are just spaces you're dropped into and basically told to make your own fun. This sandbox approach doesn't fit what I'm looking for in a Call of Duty single player story at all, and feels at odds with what made the original Modern Warfare trilogy the height of cinematic shooters. More than ever, this year's campaign bears an uncomfortable resemblance to its multiplayer companion, as Warzone and DMZ's open world approach bleeds further into the level design to its detriment.
Use it against them, Kilo.
I intend to.
If I wanted this, I'd just drop into the Battle Royale solo and run around opening boxes and fighting enemies that are actually interesting. These are criminally all solo character missions too, with communication to team members limited to radio chatter. As a result, there's zero sense of camaraderie, as that original Call of Duty pillar of squad mentality and fighting with your AI teammates is brought crashing down. They all end up blending into a rinse and repeat experience I felt like I was playing over and over, just in different locations. One particular chapter, titled High Rise, did manage to deliver relatively consistent excitement, as I ascended multiple floors of an apartment building, hunting down a target the raid style. But in all honesty, the enjoyment I garnered from this mission type was fleeting, and I soon found myself producing a small, audible sigh each time the words open combat mission appeared on the screen. There are a handful of more traditional Call of Duty style linear missions though, and those offer more consistent fun, but they neither have great highs nor lows. The best is a journey across a frozen tundra involving a snowstorm decorated shootout at a shipyard. One stealth focused mission delivers very faint echoes of the Call of Duty classic All Gillied Up, thanks to its potential for 2-for-1 headshots.
2 for 1.
But, as many imitators have found out since, sniping and a whole lot of laying down in the grass does not necessarily a great mission make, failing to capture the same level of tension that iconic mission provided. The campaign's opener takes place in a dark, rainy gulag, transplanted directly from Warzone's Verdansk. It holds promise, and can't help but conjure up memories of the original Modern Warfare 2's Captain Price rescue mission, but it sadly never reaches the same level of excitement due to enemy encounters being incredibly simplistic in nature. Once again, this proves how much this campaign is caught between trying to look to the past for familiar thrills, and failing when looking forward and creating new mission types. A prime example of this struggle is another stealth infiltration mission, which encourages you to holster your gun completely in a rather dull exercise that mostly consists of strolling around another Verdansk landmark. This time, it's Northern Airfield, and suffering insta-failed death screens if you dare step within 6 feet of someone. It's yet another example of Modern Warfare feeling like a patchwork of old fabrics, as new exciting locations are a rarity and pieces of Verdansk are recycled to diminishing effect. In total, it makes for a fairly forgettable set of missions this time around, even when it's trying its best to unsettle you with its story.
Power is sealed by those who seize it.
There's a reluctance to tell that story through gameplay. Instead, you carve your way through enemies before underwritten cutscenes move the plot along. This formula persists throughout and doesn't allow for moments like the Eiffel Tower falling around you in 2011's Modern Warfare 3 or shock and aw's explosive ending from the original Modern Warfare to occur here, instead reserving all of the scenes of limited impact for cinematics. They're undeniably beautifully rendered, complete with lifelike character models, but they do make for more of a story you end up watching unfold rather than feeling like you're an active participant in. It's another example of what the original No Russian in Modern Warfare 2 did so well. putting you at the center of its atrocities, but instead you're often kept at arm's length here, resulting in an emotionally distant experience. That being said, a similar trick is played here, with this version's take on No Russian placing you once again amid a horrific terrorist incident. It's an arresting event that at least tries to put you in the shoes of a hero, albeit with a predictable tragic outcome looming. Of course, context is important. When I first saw Clean House from 2019's Modern Warfare isolated from the rest of that campaign, I found it jarring, but within the context of that story as a whole, it's clear to see it's one of the most effective missions in the series. The same could be said for the original No Russian from 2009, an undoubtedly harrowing level, but one of Call of Duty's more impactful from a storytelling perspective. But where No Russian was effective as a catalyst for a great story, this year's take on it ultimately ends up being fairly inconsequential in the grand scheme of the plot. It just feels like it's there for the sake of it. Its only achievement is to let you know that Makarov is a bad person, as if that nail hadn't been hit on the head enough times already. It attempts to say nothing further than terrorism is bad, as innocent lives fuel yet another conflict. It's a shame that the campaign doesn't look to explore these themes further, especially in a time when the issues it takes on are so prescient. Instead, Modern Warfare 3 opts to engineer pure shock. Rather than smartly comment on the morally complex topics, it eagerly takes advantage of for entertainment value.
Our missiles were meant to be a deterrent. Peace through strength.
It makes for a 4-hour story of limited thrills, with fairly obvious twists and nostalgia plays. It promises excitement, but is frustratingly vacuous at its core. You spend so little time on missions accompanied by your squad mates that any emotional connections forged between yourself and Price, Soap, Gaz or Ghost feel completely manufactured and ineffective, especially when it attempts to generate any sense of peril. And before you know it, Modern Warfare 3 just ends. Without any true resolution or definitive closure to the looming threat, it simply rolls the credits. It's a quite sudden finale to a woefully underwritten story, capped off with a laughable sunrise backdropped cutscene. But credit must be given where it's due, and even though it's completely expected of a Call of Duty game, I have to say that the gunplay along the way is thankfully great. Smooth, snappy and sounding superb. The fizz and eventual clunk of each bullet as they reach their destination is fantastic. Those destinations though are likely the endless waves of cannon fodder being thrown your way. Enemy AI, seemingly betrayed by the shift from linear to more sandbox style areas, often appears dumb as bricks as they run out of cover with abandon and into the deadly arms of gunfire like it's a long lost friend. It's very kind for them to sit absolutely still while you line up sniper shot after sniper shot, noticing their friends heads first around them, but doing absolutely nothing to avoid the same fate themselves. There's a real lack of variety to these combat encounters too. Considering the one experiment Modern Warfare 3 conducts, the open combat missions, is something of a bust, the lack of thinking outside the box elsewhere is a real disappointment, as we're led through a story that does the bare minimum to keep your attention. Modern Warfare 3's campaign commits the biggest sin possible for a globe-trotting action thriller. It's boring. What had the promise to be an intriguingly spun web of mystery instead ends up being a dusty cobweb you'd find at the back of your shed, clinging on to 15-year-old garden toys you once had fun with. It's a pale imitation of the past, made up of underbaked story moments that clash with attempts to introduce new open combat missions designed to encourage player freedom that instead fall flat on their face. Yes, the gunplay is still great, and the graphics and sound design are top tier, but I couldn't help but feel I was playing a shinier, less subtle version of something I've played too many times before. If this is the quality we've come to expect from Call of Duty campaigns, maybe it's for the best if a year or two is taken to reset and raise this low bar back to the heights of old. For more Call of Duty, why not check out our video on how Call of Duty reinvented the first-person shooter, or our Art of the Level video on the iconic No Russian mission.